Hey guys, in this video I'll show you a Magicka Nightblade build for solo. It's a build I've tested by soloing veteran hard mode Cradle of Shadows and veteran Icereach. But I will also link logs and footage of soloing Oakenclaw, a Westfield world boss, so that more casual players can watch proof footage that is easier for them to relate to and understand. It's going to be a pure class build, so no subclassing. The build is also on my website, so if you prefer written guides over YouTube videos, you can read it there instead. The link will be in the description. Moving on to skills. This is the base setup that will work for most situations and which should be your starting point when making situational setups. Concealed Weapon is a very strong spammable, which will deal increased damage after relieving invisibility, which will get triggered by Shadowy Disguise. Impale is an execute you should switch to when enemy is below 25% HP. Relentless Focus is an ability that will cause your light attacks to generate stacks. You can spend 4 stacks to fire a powerful arrow that also heals you if you're in melee range. It also passively grants you major savagery and prophecy. Traveling Knife, with the Poison, Lingering Torment and Berserk combination on it, is a stamina skill which deals decent initial damage, applies a 20-second dot, and grants you Minor Berserk, increasing your damage down by 5%. It's extremely important because it can be used as a semi-spammable, which will take pressure off your Magicka pool, allowing it to sustain bystat food. Ulf's Contingency, with the Bleed, Lingering Torment and Force combination on it, is a 22-second dot, which also grants you Minor Force, increasing your critical damage by 10%. This ability is also your AoE spammable. Soul Harvest is a cheap ultimate that increases target's damage taken from you by 20%. Having it slotted will also cause you to regain 10 ultimate whenever you deal a final blow against an enemy. Shadowy Disguise is an ability that will increase your damage down by 10% for 10 seconds after being cast. It will also passively grant you Minor Protection, which reduces your damage taken by 5%. It will also trigger the Shadow Barrier passive, which grants Major Resolve, increasing armor by 5948. When timed correctly, you can use this ability to dodge heavy attacks. Siphoning attacks will passively heal you and improve your sustain. It can also be used to trade health for a burst of stamina and magicka. Next we have Elemental Susceptibility, an extremely loaded ability that does a multitude of things. First of all, it's completely free to cast, so it helps us sustain. Second, it applies Major Breach, which reduces enemies' armor by 5948, which is a massive damage increase. And third, it applies Burning, Chilled and Concussed stats effects at the beginning and then every 7.5 seconds. All of these stats effects deal decent damage, but Concussed will also apply Minor Vulnerability for 4 seconds, increasing enemies' damage taken by 5%. Chilled will also apply Minor Maim for 4 seconds, reducing enemies' damage down by 5%, and it will also apply Minor Brittle for 4 seconds, if you were on your Ice Staff bar, while the Chilled effect procced. And Ice Staff will be part of the instance gear setup. Minor Brittle increases critical damage taken by 10%. The Chilled proc will also synergize with our next ability. Elemental Blockade will constantly apply our Backbar enchant, in this case the weapon damage enchantment. And if it's the Ice version, it will also constantly apply Minor Breach to enemies who are chilled, and they will be chilled thanks to Elemental Susceptibility. Darkshade deals constant AoE damage and applies Minor Maim, reducing enemies' damage down by 5%. And Shooting Star is a powerful ultimate that deals damage on AoE and grants you ultimate for each enemy hit with the initial blast. So that was the base setup, but now I'm gonna show you a bunch of situational skills, which you can use to tailor this base setup to specific fights. Impale and Traveling Knife are the first skills that have to go if you need to slot something situational, unless the situational skill specifically says that it's replacing something else. Swallow Soul is an alternative spammable, which deals less damage but heals you and is ranged. It will also trigger the Magicka Flute passive. Next we have Resolving Vigor. Use it for fights where there's a lot of damage happening in a short burst. The heal over time from Resolving Vigor is short but very strong, so casting it at the right time can help you survive such mechanics. The Minor Resolve it provides will also reduce all of your damage taken. It can also be used in fights with invulnerability phases, where you can't heal with Ring of the Pet Order or Swallow Soul. Silver Leash is a chain ability that you can slot in trash packs to stack enemies and get through them faster. Razor Caltrops is a source of AoE Major Breach, which can be used instead of Elemental Susceptibility in AoE fights. Ulf's Contingency, with the Bleed, Gladiator's Tenacity and Force combination on it, is a different script combination, which trades the dot from Lingering Torment for the mitigation from Gladiator's Tenacity. Use it in fights where you need more damage mitigation. Next we have Revealing Flare. Use it for more difficult fights, where you, once again, need more damage mitigation. It's a skill that passively grants major protection, reducing your damage taken by 10%. It will also trigger the Magicka 8 passive, which increases your Magicka recovery by 10%. Race Against Time is a snare removal which will be crucial for some fights. It replaces Ulf's Contingency, because it also provides minor force. Ambush is an alternative to Traveling Knife, which deals less damage but is a gap closer, so it can be used in fights where you have to move around a lot. Barb Trap is an alternative source of minor force, which can replace Ulf's Contingency. It does more damage, but without Ulf's Silt, you don't have an AoE spammable, so only use Barb Trap in single target fights. Soul Burst, with the Bleed, Lingering Torment, and Courage combination on it, is a 20-second AoE dot which grants you minor courage, which increases your weapon and spell damage by 215. It becomes crucial in ranged setup, because that setup cannot use Traveling Knife, so it needs another stamina ability to reduce the strain on Magicka pool. Consuming Trap is a very weak dot which replenishes your resources when the affected target dies. It can provide you with a lot of sustain in fights which constantly spawn weak adds. Next we have Precognition, an ultimate that breaks you out of some otherwise unavoidable stuns. You'll need it to get around some mechanics which are otherwise impossible or very difficult to solo, like for example Inferno's Hold in Zan the Scalecaller fight. Now let me show you a bunch of examples of how your final setup could look after you apply these situational skills to your base setup. Here is a setup for dealing with trash bugs. Silver Leash replaces Traveling Knife, and Razor Caltrops replaces Elemental Susceptibility. This is a setup for ranged fights. Swallow Soul replaces Concealed Weapon, Soul Burst replaces Traveling Knife, and Soul Burst and Shadow Disguise swap places. Without being able to improve your sustain by recasting Traveling Knife, you'll need to either change your food to one that provides some Magicka recovery, or heavy attack every now and then. The approach of fitting in a few heavy attacks parsed higher than the approach with changing food. And this is a tanky setup, which trades damage for survivability. Use it against harder boss fights, or if you simply want a tankier build and don't mind fights taking longer. Swallow Soul replaces Concealed Weapon. Revealing Flare replaces Impale. And Ulf's Contingency changes the Lingering Torment script to Gladiator's Tenacity. And if you need even more survivability, you can replace Dark Shade with Resolving Vigor. Now as for rotation, I don't use a static rotation, so this is just a list of priorities. Simply recast abilities when they run out, and follow the list of priorities when there are multiple things to refresh. Use Traveling Knife more often than once every 20 seconds. It's the only way to sustain your Magicka, unless you have some additional sustain, for example from a racial. If in a certain fight you're getting additional sustain, for example from using siphoning spells in a fight with lots of adds, or sustain by suffering in a fight with constant debuffs, then you can go back to refreshing Traveling Knife every 20 seconds. Try to avoid refreshing dots while Soul Harvest is active. If a dot has expired at the beginning of Soul Harvest, it's usually worth it to recast it. But if it expired with 2 seconds left on Soul Harvest, it's usually better to continue using direct hits and refresh the dot after the Soul Harvest has expired. Try to save up Relentless Focus stacks for a Soul Harvest, but don't waste them by letting them go over 10. Other than that, you just follow the list of priorities shown on the screen, and remember that you can pre-buff the abilities listed at the bottom. Now as for passives, the only passive you specifically have to skip is Trifocus, but only when using an Ice Staff. I am now very quickly going through all of the passives you should get on the screen. You can either pause the video or look up this list on the website guide. Some trees are only needed when using situational skills. For example, Fighter's Guild provides nothing without Barb Trap or Silver Leash, and Siege Order provides nothing without Precognition. Moving on to gear. This is a base setup that is meant for overland content, and will work for most situations. It should be your starting point when making situational setups. So Order's Wrath, Tideborn Wadstalker, Ring of the Pale Order Mythic, Backbard Crushing Wall, and One Piece Slamcrow. But there is also gear that can be stronger than the setup from the table in specific situations, or when specific circumstances are present. Sul'Dan's Torment is the best set for trash packs, and for bosses that regularly spawn smaller adds. War of the Depths is a strong proc set which pulls ahead of Order's Wrath in instance content, where you can utilize its 3-piece Minor Slayer bonus. Vestments of Olorim provides 430 weapon and spell damage, 5% damage reduction from Minor Aegis, and can be backbarred without losing anything, allowing for much more flexibility with gear. It's the ideal set for more difficult fights. Roxa the Warped is a monster set which provides a lot of sustain. You will only have space for it when backbarring Olorim. Armor of the Trainee's 1-piece bonus provides 1454 max health. It also comes in any weight, so we can use it on the chest piece, which combined with the reinforced trait will provide a lot of armor. For ranged fights, replace the daggers of a lightning staff with precise trait and poison enchant. Now let me show you a bunch of examples of final setups you could end up with. This is an example of a crafted gear setup you can start with. Regular setup already uses 2 crafted sets, so the crafted setup is barely any different in this guide. It uses Order's Wrath, Tideborn Watchstalker, and fills the gaps with Highland Sentinel. The weight distribution of the setup from the table is 1 heavy, 1 medium, 5 light, so that you can start leveling up all your armor skill lines. Once you transition to regular setup, you'll be using 2 medium, 5 light, switching to 1 heavy, 1 medium, 5 light, only against more difficult fights. The setup in the table uses only crafted gear, but if you already own some parts of the regular setup, like Ring of the Pale Order, you can start using them immediately. Now, this is a setup you should use in instance content, so arenas and dungeons. Enemies in instance content have 18,200 armor, while overland enemies have only 9,100, so this setup will need much more penetration. War of the Depths replaces Order's Wrath, because in instance content, you can benefit from the Minor Slayer buff, which makes it better. 1-piece Slamcrow is replaced with 1-piece Vulcan Scoria. Inferno Staff is replaced with Ice Staff, because Ice Elemental Blockade will improve uptime of the Minor Breach debuff. And weight composition goes from 2 medium 5 light to 1 medium 6 light, so we can benefit a bit more from the concentration passive. If you don't have access to trial gear, then go back to using Order's Wrath instead of War of the Depths, just like in regular setup. Changing Dagger to a Mace is the exact same trade-off as changing Slamcrow to Vulcan Scoria, due to the Twin Blade and Blunt passive. Use whichever approach is more convenient for you, depending on the gear you own. And this is my suggested setup for soloing extremely difficult fights in dungeons. Unlike the tanky skill setup, which can be used for both difficult and easy stuff, this tanky gear setup only makes sense in instance content, because it focuses on utilizing Minor Aegis, Minor Slayer, and on getting additional sustain from Roxa, which is mostly useful only in super difficult fights, where you have to dodge roll a lot. So here are the changes, but this time compared to the instance setup, not the base setup. War of the Depths is now frontbarred, instead of being fully on body. Tideborn Watchstalker and Crushing Wall get replaced by backbarred Vestments of Olorim. This creates space for adding a monster set, Roxa the Warped, and 1 piece of Armor of the Trainee on your chest slot, with heavy armor weight and reinforced trait. Additionally, you can change some or all of the Magicka enchants to health ones for extremely hard-hitting bosses. Well-fitted is also a decent option instead of divines, because many difficult dungeon fights will require you to dodge roll a lot. Moving on to champion points. In the blue tree, you'll want to use Master at Arms, Deadly Aim, Fighting Finesse, and Wrathful Strikes. When soloing extremely difficult dungeons, you should replace Wrathful Strikes and Fighting Finesse with 2 of the 4 mitigation slotables that match the fight's damage type, so Ironclad, Duelist Rebuff, Unassailable, and Enduring Resolve. Huge majority of the times is going to be Ironclad and Duelist's Rebuff. Riving Blows is another decent blue CP for when you need more HPS. In the red tree, you'll want to use Bundles of Vitality, Siphoning Spells, Rejuvenation, and Fortified. Make sure to use Bracing Anchor in fights where you have to block a lot of attacks, and where you don't have to move that much. And remember to use Celerity in fights where you have to move a lot. You can use Bloody Renewal along Siphoning Spells in the fights with lots of ads. And you can use Sustain by Suffering in fights where you have a constant debuff applied to you. Moving on to race. When it comes to solo PvE, you need both damage and survivability, so pretty much all races have useful ratios. The best race for dealing damage is Khajiit. While the critical damage from Feline Ambush can sometimes be wasted, due to critical damage being capped at 125%, it will never happen in solo content, because there will be no tanks or healers, providing you with the major force buff. The best race for survivability, and what I am using, is Nord. The Ragged Racial will provide around 6% damage mitigation. Now Mundus. Huge majority of the times, you should use the Shadow Mundus, which increases your critical damage. For extremely difficult dungeons, you should consider switching to the Lady Mundus, which increases your armor. For most content, you should put all 64 points into Magicka. For difficult content, you should devote as many attribute points as necessary to health. For some content, you'll be able to get away with 32 health, 32 Magicka. For the extremely difficult stuff, you'll need 64 health. Moving on to food. Your sustain can vary greatly because it's impacted by your armor weight composition, your race, and how much blocking or dodge rolling you're required to do in a certain fight. Choose the food with more recoveries, if you can sustain. So first we have Artium Pickled Fishbowl, which provides max health and max Magicka, and it's the default option. Solitude Salmon Millet Soup is a cheaper alternative. Next we have Orzorga's Red Frofgar, which provides max health and Magicka recovery. Use it when you need more Magicka recovery. And then we have Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch, which provides maximum health, stamina recovery, and Magicka recovery. Use it when you can't sustain your Magicka skills, and also need more stamina recovery, for blocking or dodge rolling. Jewels of Mithril is a cheaper alternative. Moving on to potions. Use the Spell Power potions. They'll provide major sorcery and major prophecy, which are crucial buffs. You can craft them by combining Lady's Smoke, Namira's Rot, and Cornflower. Moving on to Parse. In all of these parses I'm using instance gear, because the skeleton dummy is kind of like a dungeon enemy. It has 18,000 armor, and it takes more damage if you have Minor Slayer. I parsed 60.2k using the regular skill setup. This DPS went down to 55.5k when using the ranged skill setup, and 53.1k when using the tanky skill setup. Moving on to gameplay. These were already mentioned in the intro, but I have tested the build in the Veteran Hard Mode Cradle of Shadows dungeon, in Veteran Icereach dungeon, but also against a Westfield world boss, Oakenclaw, to show off its power in a much easier content, to give casual players an easier comparison. You'll be able to find both logs and recordings of all of these in the description of this video and on the website guide. And that's it for this video. If you have any more questions, you can comment down below or join our Discord server Wildheart. As always, feedback will be appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out my Twitch. Thanks for watching and see you next time.